Hey, it's Joyce Conroy, host of the Block Party. Welcome back to Ernie's Corner. Lou Reed is a performer that we so respect, not only with what he has done with the Velvet Underground, but his solo albums and his third solo LP, Berlin. Ernie Cefalu, it's quite an interesting concept, isn't it?
Oh, Joyce, thank you so much. It certainly is. It's a crazy story of connecting the dots and moving back to move forward and looking at all that. And again, I want to thank you and all the people on the block, all my neighbors on the block. I mean, I'm really starting to sort of feel at home here and get a lot of response from people on Facebook that live on the block and have lived on the block and still do. And I'm just very honored that you're giving me the opportunity, Joyce. And today we're going to talk about a cover that I was a huge fan before I became a person that was working with Lou. I loved Lou. When I was in college, the Velvet Underground came out with that banana that you peel back, and it was, with Nico, and you weren't sure whether Nico was a man or a woman, and there was all this craziness that was going on. And, after that, I came to New York. After a year or so in New York, I hooked up with Craig Braun. And that's kind of where I remember going to the interview there, and I had just done Jesus Christ Superstar, like we talked about. And I had gone to Craig's office on an interview, and I was showing him, the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff. But one of the things there were a couple of things that really intrigued me about Craig Braun. The company, not so much Craig, but the company was all young people. I don't think there was anybody there over 30. And I had come from Madison Avenue, where I was probably the youngest person there at 25 or 6. So, it was a complete turnaround. It was something that I really was always looking for and hoping that Madison Avenue would be, but it wasn't. It was still stuck in the ad man era, So this was a refreshing experience for me to show up there. And then the other big thing that caught my eye was that they had done the Velvet Underground album with the banana on it. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. And the way it turned out was Craig Braun was a sticker salesman. He sold stickers that were coming on the shrink wrap of albums that would say, like, Jackson Browne, Doctor These Eyes, contains the hit single. So it was a way of promoting the single that was on the album, and that's what he did. And he got an opportunity to do that banana because he was like one of the top guys in the sticker business, and they had an adhesive that would you could remove it and put it back on, and remove it and put it back on. There was really usually stickers where you stick them on something and you can't get them back off. So this was a new thing that was new to that industry, and he had it, and that's how he got involved with it. And then I show up at his doorstep with the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff, and it got me in the door, and he was very excited and blown away by the Dolls Alive piece that I had showed him after Jesus Christ Superstar. He wanted to see what else I had done. So to make a long story short, I was now working at Craig Braun. I was doing the Rolling Stones song. I was creating comps for Alice Cooper and Cheech and Chong. And we came to LA to open up an LA office, ended up leaving after 3 months and started our own company in 1972, Pacific Pioneer. And by 1973, around August, Lou Reed had reached out to my partner, Tony, who he had met when they were doing the sticker for the Lou Reed or for the Velvet Underground album. And also he had a liking for Tony because of the Stones tongue that we had done. And so after, he was in the studio doing Berlin, he thought about Tony and realized that Craig Braun was no longer in business, searched him out and found him at Pacific Pioneer. And Tony was in New York at the time, so he met with Lou, and I got a chance to talk to him on the phone, and it was amazing. And the album was Berlin. He was in the studio working on it, and it was a very personal thing. Unlike, Walk on the Wild Side, which was the huge hit that he had before the Berlin album, and I think people were still wanting to hear more of that, and Walk on the Wild Side upbeat kind of thing, and Berlin was definitely not that. Berlin was more of a personal experience that Lou had in a love triangle with another guy and a lady. And the entire album is based on the experiences that he went through in this relationship, and came back and wrote all the songs. And as I was working on, coming up with ideas for the album, Berlin, I had a chance to talk to him a couple more times. And after the second call, or actually toward the end of that second call, and he was sharing with me some of these personal experiences. So here's a guy that I was like a huge fan of, and now I'm sharing personally in his life, which was really kind of a different experience than I had experienced up to that point. Even though, by this time I'm pretty close with Alice Cooper and, Captain Beyond and Lee Dorman and those guys, but this was different. This was like sharing your deepest emotional experiences with somebody that you don't really know that well, but he wanted me to get it right. He was a fan of my work. I was a huge fan of his. And so we hit it off. And at that meeting, that second call, I suggested that what we do is create a movie in stills, in 10 stills. So he really loved that idea. And what you see behind me is the Berlin album cover. And I'll post these images to you, Joyce, so you can post them. But what we did was I worked with a photographer. His name was Santiago de Sange. He was like Salvador Dali with a camera instead of paint and a brush. And we created 10 images for each song that when you listen to the music and you look at the image, it's like you gave Salvador Dali a camera, and we set up this environment that was exactly what Lou was feeling. And to know that for sure, at the end of the album, when my partner was in the studio as they were putting the final touches on the record and it was going out to be pressed, Tony shared the album because it was printed in New York and Los Angeles. He was at the printing in New York. I was at the printing in the press check in LA. And he took an album right off the press to Lou, and Lou was in the studio. And he called me. So I'm working, and I get this call from Lou Reed, and I swear to God, he was so emotionally moved by it. He was crying, and I started crying. And he was just so blown away by what we had done. And I want to just share another image. So what you see over here on this side it was the poster that we created for Berlin. And then on the right side, you see the album cover. And what I want to do is show you just a couple other images, and I'll put this together to share with you, Joyce. But this is a couple of the shots. You can't see them that well, but when I give it to you and you repost it, you'll be able to see them better. Or if you go online and Google Lou Reed Berlin and the libretto, you'll see these images. And each shot is so detailed down to all the different little hidden messages. As you're listening to the song, there's a hidden message. The second guy in the relationship's in the reflection in this mirror, and there's another woman that's standing in the doorway, and here's him and the woman and the rose, and and then on this side you see, this one is really crazy. This was an image that's got a blood smear on the mirror in the back. There's a straight edge razor here. There's a coffin floating. I mean, it's just really, and when you listen to the lyrics of the song, it shows it without even explaining it. It explains it, and which Lou was just really blown away. I want to do one more here. This is to show, let's see, this one. How do I do this? Okay. Oh, there. What this is an example of Bill Garland, who was one of the staff illustrators. He had not only was an amazing cartoonist, but he was an incredible calligrapher. You could show him a handwritten font and he could copy it. And this is no fluke. Each one of those words, each one of those letters is done without any mistakes. And it's all done with a pen, a calligraphy pen. He did it across 10 lyrics, 10 different lyrics for the songs. And the background that you see here, we needed an aerial shot of all these people because there was the love triangle, and then there were all these other people that were in the outer circle outside of that triangle that Lou had set up. And so we needed to do a shot of all these people, you know. And so what I did was at UCLA, UCLA, they had a sound stage that had the ability to get up above and shoot down on aerial shots. And so what I did was, on a huge piece of, I laid out all this backdrop paper. So it was this white background, and I laid out the area where the photo is, and we used the same background, and I lined the people, and I outlined the shape of the photograph on the ground, and then placed all the people around them so that we knew that we could get everybody in, you know. And then we shot the shot from, like, I don't know, 15 feet up, so that we could get everybody in there so we could get that shot. A lot of people go, how the hell did you do that? There was no Photoshop. We couldn't shoot people individually and put them together. This had to be one shot. And then we used that on every background of each one of the different lyrics in front and back cover. And I just turned it different ways so that it would look like it was different. So there were a lot of ways to trick the camera back in the day. But, you know, I mean, it's really kind of funny because when the album came out, everybody was expecting, and we had talked about this before, about how the Beatles kind of changed that mindset of, no, this song sounds like the other hit they had, so it's going to be a hit. And they sort of did it that way. You know, people were really wanting to Walk on the Wild Side. And when this album came out, it was like really misunderstood. And years later, you know, it was dissed a lot. But years later, I think probably less than 8 or 9 years ago, it ranked in number 343 in Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time, you know. And that's pretty incredible, you know, for something that was kind of so disliked. I mean, I guess that's one of the cool things about music, because it keeps getting reinvented and it keeps getting rediscovered, and the songs live on, you know, they just live on. Again, you know, it's an abbreviated version of what we went through over 3 months of creating this album cover for Lou. And the songs are really incredible. I'm as always, I'm torn between two. You know, how do you think it feels? Because that really is coming right from Lou's soul. Okay. And then Lady Day, you know, which is another great song. There's a lot of great songs on the album. And, you know, I would highly recommend it if you're a Lou Reed fan. So thank you.
You're welcome, Ernie. You make great choices.
Well, I'm glad you like them. Yeah, and I hope that all the neighbors like them too. But make sure the one thing you got to do for the neighbors and me is to play it really loud.